What happens when the world's biggest superstar suddenly collapses in the middle of the stage? The music stopped. 80,000 voices went silent. Security rushed from every direction. But what happened next would prove why Michael Jackson wasn't just the king of pop, he was something much more profound. This is the story of the night that changed everything. But to understand that moment, we need to go back to 3 hours earlier, when Michael Jackson was preparing for what was supposed to be just another concert in his Dangerous World Tour. October 15, 1993. Bucharest National Arena. The largest crowd in Romanian history had gathered to see the man who had redefined what it meant to be a global superstar. Michael stood in his dressing room, adjusting the iconic sequined glove that had become his trademark. His team buzzed around him, sound technicians checking microphones, choreographers reviewing dance sequences, security briefing him on crowd control protocols. Everything was routine. Everything was professional. Everything was exactly as it had been for hundreds of concerts before. But Michael wasn't thinking about the choreography or the set list. He was thinking about a letter that had arrived at his hotel that morning. A letter from a 7-year-old girl named Anna, written in broken English, telling him about her little brother Stefan, who was fighting leukemia at Bucharest Children's Hospital. Stefan, who had never been to a concert. Stefan, who listened to Heal the World every night before his chemotherapy sessions. Stefan, who had drawn a picture of himself dancing with Michael Jackson when he got better. The letter had been one of thousands that arrived wherever Michael went. Fan mail was nothing new. But something about Anna's words had stayed with him all day. Maybe it was the way she described how her brother smiled when he heard Michael's voice. Maybe it was the crayon drawing she had included, stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. Or maybe it was something deeper, something that connected to the part of Michael that remembered being a child performer himself, understanding what it meant to find hope in music when everything else felt uncertain. Michael folded the letter carefully and placed it in his jacket pocket, right over his heart. The arena was electric. 80,000 people created a wall of sound that could be heard 3 miles away. Romanian fans had waited decades for this moment, their first major Western pop concert since the fall of communism. For many, this wasn't just entertainment. It was freedom. It was proof that their world was changing, that borders were opening, that dreams could become reality. Michael took the stage with his usual explosive energy. Jam thundered through the speakers as he emerged from beneath the stage, and the crowd's roar was deafening. This was Michael in his element, every move precise, every note perfect, every moment designed to create pure joy. But as the concert progressed, something felt different. During "The Way You Make Me Feel," Michael found himself scanning the crowd more intensely than usual. He was looking for something. Or someone. 3 songs in, during "Billie Jean," the arena erupted in the familiar frenzy. Fans were crying, fainting, reaching desperately toward the stage. But Michael's attention was caught by a commotion near the front section. Security guards were trying to maintain order as a small group pushed forward. Not the usual fan rush, this was different. More urgent. More desperate. Through the stage lights and chaos, Michael saw them. A woman in a worn coat, tears streaming down her face, holding the hand of a small boy. The boy couldn't have been more than 7 years old, painfully thin, wearing a knit cap that couldn't quite hide the fact that he had no hair. In his other hand, he clutched a hand-drawn picture. Stefan. Michael Jackson stopped singing mid-verse. The music continued, but his voice had gone silent. 80,000 people sensed something had shifted. The energy changed. The arena began to quiet, confused murmurs rippling through the crowd like a wave. Security moved toward the stage, unsure what was happening. Band members exchanged glances. This wasn't in the script. This wasn't rehearsed. Michael Jackson never broke character during a performance. But Michael wasn't performing anymore. He was simply a human being who had recognized another human being who needed him. He walked to the edge of the stage and knelt down. The arena was now completely silent, 80,000 people holding their breath. Michael looked directly at Stefan, who was still 50 feet away in the crowd, and gestured for him to come closer. What happened next would become legend, but not in the way anyone expected. Security parted the crowd as Anna helped her little brother move toward the stage. Stefan's legs were weak from months of treatment, but his eyes never left Michael. When they reached the security barrier, Michael did something that violated every safety protocol, every insurance policy, every rule of concert performance. He jumped down from the stage. The crowd gasped. Band members stopped playing entirely now. This was unprecedented. Michael Jackson, the most protected entertainer in the world, had just left the safety of his stage and walked into a crowd of 80,000 people with no security escort. But Michael didn't see 80,000 people. He saw one little boy who needed to know that someone cared. He knelt in front of Stefan, and the boy held up his drawing, the same stick figures Anna had described in her letter. Michael took the picture with the same reverence he might have shown a priceless artifact. He studied it carefully, and then he did something that made grown men in the audience weep. He began to sing, "Heal the World," a cappella, directly to Stefan, as if they were the only two people in the universe. "There's a place in your heart, and I know that it is love." His voice, without microphones or amplification, somehow filled the vast arena. The crowd, understanding they were witnessing something sacred, remained completely silent. Even the band stayed motionless on stage, afraid that any sound might break the spell. But then Michael did something even more extraordinary. As he sang, he began to remove his iconic sequined glove, the glove that had become synonymous with his identity, that was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, that was protected by insurance policies and security teams. He placed it gently in Stefan's small hands. The arena erupted. But not in the usual screaming and chaos. This was different. This was 80,000 people experiencing something they had never felt before. Some wept openly. Others fell to their knees. Many joined their voices to Michael's, turning, "Heal the World," into the largest choir in Romanian history. Subscribe now and comment below, because what you're about to see next will prove why this moment changed not just Stefan's life, but Michael Jackson's legacy forever. Stefan, weak as he was, began to sing along. His voice was barely audible, but Michael heard every word. The little boy's face, which had been pale and drawn from months of medical treatments, now radiated a joy that seemed to illuminate the entire arena. But Michael wasn't done. He carefully lifted Stefan into his arms, this tiny, fragile child who weighed no more than a feather, and carried him toward the stage. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, every person in the arena understanding they were witnesses to something beyond entertainment, beyond performance, beyond anything they had ever imagined possible. When they reached the stage, Michael didn't put Stefan down. Instead, he carried him up the steps and placed him gently center stage, under the brightest spotlight in the arena. "Ladies and gentlemen," Michael said into his microphone, his voice thick with emotion, "I want you to meet my friend Stefan. He's the bravest person I've ever met." The arena exploded in applause that lasted 7 full minutes. But Stefan, overwhelmed by the lights and sound and the impossibility of the moment, began to collapse. The excitement, combined with his weakened condition, was too much. And that's when Michael Jackson did something that would haunt and inspire the world in equal measure. He lay down on the stage next to Stefan, matching the little boy's position, and wrapped his arms around him. To 80,000 people and millions watching on television, it looked like the king of pop was simply lying on the ground with a sick child. But to Stefan, it was the moment he understood that he wasn't alone in his fight. But here's the incredible part of this story. The part no one expected. As they lay there together, Stefan whispered something in Michael's ear. Something so quiet that not even the closest microphones picked it up. But later, in interviews, Michael would reveal what the little boy had said. "Mr. Michael, I'm not scared anymore." That moment, that simple, profound statement from a dying child to the world's biggest superstar, changed something fundamental in Michael Jackson. Not just as a performer, but as a human being. The concert continued with transformed energy. Stefan remained on stage, clutching Michael's glove like a talisman. When Michael performed "Man in the Mirror," he sang directly to Stefan. During "The Way You Make Me Feel," His dance made the little boy actually laugh for the first time in months. For the final song, Michael made an unprecedented announcement. Tonight, we're not going to perform Heal the World. We're going to pray it. What followed transcended performance. Michael sang like a lullaby while 80,000 people joined and whispered harmony. Adults who had survived oppression, teenagers who had never known freedom, children witnessing pure magic. Stefan, wearing the iconic glove, sang along with weak but determined voice. Share this video and subscribe because this story becomes even more incredible when you understand the legacy that followed. The concert ended, but the story was just beginning. Michael spent an additional 2 hours after the show with Stefan and his family. They talked about music, about dreams, about what Stefan wanted to do when he got better. Michael promised to stay in touch. He promised to remember. But more importantly, Michael made a decision that night that would reshape his entire career. He established what would become the Heal the World Foundation, dedicated specifically to helping terminally ill children around the world. Stefan became not just the inspiration, but the first official ambassador of the foundation. The sequined glove that Michael had given Stefan that night was never replaced. Instead, Michael had a new glove made, one that contained a small piece of fabric from Stefan's hospital gown sewn into the palm. For the rest of his career, Michael wore that glove during every single performance of Heal the World, carrying a piece of Stefan's courage with him wherever he went. Stefan's battle with leukemia continued for 8 more months. But according to medical records that were later made public with the family's permission, something remarkable happened after that night in Bucharest. Stefan's condition stabilized. His response to treatment improved dramatically. Doctors called it medically unusual. His family called it a miracle. Stefan called it Michael's magic. He lived for 2.5 more years, far longer than any medical professional had predicted. And during that time, he and Michael maintained a correspondence that would eventually fill 3 thick binders. Letters about music, about life, about hope. Pictures of Stefan slowly getting stronger. Videos of him learning to play piano, inspired by watching Michael perform. When Stefan finally passed away in March 1996, Michael flew privately to Romania to attend his funeral. He sang Heal the World at the graveside, a cappella, just as he had that night in the arena. But this time, instead of 80,000 witnesses, there were only Stefan's family and a few close friends. Anna, Stefan's sister, later revealed that her brother's final words were about that night. "Tell Mr. Michael," he had whispered, "that I'm still not scared." The impact of that single moment rippled far beyond one family, one concert, or even one country. Michael's Heal the World Foundation went on to help over 100,000 terminally ill children worldwide. The foundation funded hospitals, supported research, and most importantly, brought moments of joy to children facing the darkest periods of their lives. But perhaps the most lasting legacy was how it changed Michael Jackson himself. Those who worked closest with him said that after Bucharest, he approached every performance differently. He wasn't just entertaining, he was connecting. He wasn't just singing, he was healing. Every concert became an opportunity to find those moments of genuine human connection that transcended fame, wealth, and celebrity. The original drawing that Stefan had made, the stick figures holding hands under a rainbow, was framed and hung in Michael's private study at Neverland Ranch. Visitors would often find Michael sitting in front of it, especially during difficult times in his life. It served as a reminder of what really mattered, of why his gift existed, of the responsibility that came with being able to touch millions of hearts with a single song. Years later, when Michael was struggling with his own personal challenges, he would often reference that night in Bucharest. In interviews, he would say that Stefan had taught him more about courage than any adult ever had. That a dying 7-year-old had shown him what it truly meant to be fearless. The sequined glove that Stefan wore that night was eventually donated to the Romanian National Museum, where it remains on permanent display. But the real monument to that evening isn't in any museum. It's in the thousands of children who received help through the Heal the World Foundation. It's in the medical research that was funded. It's in the families who found hope when they thought none existed. And it's in the memory of one small boy who wasn't afraid anymore, because the king of pop had knelt down in front of 80,000 people and reminded him that love really can heal the world. Stefan's story reminds us that sometimes the greatest performances happen not when everything goes according to plan, but when human beings choose to see each other, to care for each other, to lift each other up in moments when it matters most. Michael Jackson died in 2009, but the foundation he created continues his work. Every year on October 15th, the anniversary of that concert in Bucharest, the foundation holds a special event for terminally ill children around the world. They call it Stefan's Night, and every child receives a replica of Michael's sequined glove, along with a card that reads, "You are braver than you know. You are not alone. Heal the world." Because sometimes the most powerful thing a superstar can do is remember that behind every face in the crowd is a human being with dreams, fears, hopes, and the simple need to know that someone cares. And sometimes, the most profound healing happens not through medicine or surgery, but through a moment of connection between two souls who understand what it means to be vulnerable, to be human, and to choose love over fear. That's the real magic of Michael Jackson. Not the moonwalk, not the record sales, not the awards or accolades. It's the moment he chose to see Stefan not as a fan, but as a friend. Not as a number in the crowd, but as a human being deserving of dignity, respect, and love. Share this story if it touched your heart. Subscribe if you believe in the power of human connection. Because stories like Stefan's need to be remembered, need to be told, need to remind us all of what's possible when we choose compassion over indifference, love over fear, and hope over despair.